What was your breaking point where you snapped and went off on a rude-ass customer? One of my coworkers was feeling under the weather about midway through her shift, so I was asked to move my till over to the register she was on so that she could go home. No biggie. I grab my till, walk over, and quietly tell coworker, "Hey, I'm here to relieve you so you can go home. Hope you feel better." She finishes up her transaction, pulls her till out, starts gathering her stuff up. Next customer in line starts complaining about how long she's going to have to wait. I put my till into the register. "It'll just be a moment, ma'am." Sign on. "Just give me a minute and I'll be with you," and start scanning her stuff. Customer complains about coworker not ringing her up. "She should have rung me up. I've been waiting for 10 minutes. A lie, since it had been slow with multiple registers open, and coworker had taken maybe 2 minutes with her previous customer and still scanning. "I'm very sorry about that, ma'am, but coworker was not feeling well, and I was asked to relieve her so she could go home." Customer was not satisfied. "Well, why didn't she stay home if she was sick?" I don't even look up at that point, because I'm just seething. Still scanning her stuff, I respond, "Maybe she was feeling well at the start of her shift and only started feeling bad after she got here. Or maybe she tried to come in and work through feeling sick because maybe, just maybe, she relies on the money she makes here to have a roof over her head and food in her stomach and can't afford to take a sick day." I finish ringing her up. "Your total is..." Not another word out of her. She grabbed her stuff and got out. Story 2. I used to be a shift supervisor at a pet store. I once had one of the girls come up to the front crying. Immediately, my big sister instincts kicked in, and I asked her what's wrong. Turns out there is some git back in the dog food section that she was trying to help, and he was a total ass to her, arguing with her about something that she was entirely correct about. So I head back there. Banana Head is back there, throwing around bags of dog food. So I ask if he needs help, and he goes off on me about the girl that was just back there and how useless she was. So I listen to him rant and then correct him and tell him he was out of line. He gives me the favorite, "Haven't you heard the phrase, the customer is always right" line? So I give him a flat look and respond with, "Yeah, and in this case, he's also a horse's ass." He loses it and yells, saying he wants to speak to the manager. I give a shrug and say, "I am the manager. If you want, you can fill out a customer complaint card on your way out, and I will make sure I get it, but you need to leave now." I have managed at so many different retail stores, I'm not even fazed by people anymore. I'm so glad to be out of the industry. Ed Story 3. I worked retail when I was in college. A customer came to my till, and one of the products he had was a large version of a chocolate bar. I scanned it and he started giving me crap because the price was wrong. I knew the price wasn't wrong because I enjoy this particular chocolate and bought it all the time. He walked me down to the shelf where it was and pointed out the price tag. I told him that's the wrong price tag. It was for regular size, not large. He asked me, "Are you ducking blind?" I responded with, "Yes, actually, I'm blind in one eye, but I can still see that this price tag is for a regular size bar and not large. Look at the small letters under the price." He immediately turned nice and bought me a chocolate bar. But screw retail. We're doing that again. Story 4. I worked at a party city in Minnesota. There was one night where I was working the register. It was near the end of the night and tired, still had homework, and was in a bad mood. However, I was still polite and friendly. This lady comes in, grabs a few items, and comes to the register. She doesn't say anything, even when I try to make small talk. She seemed like a snooty woman. She just stared at her phone, pays, and leaves. A few minutes later, she comes in looking for her phone, clearly frustrated, and I tell her I hasn't seen it and that I was sure she had walked out with it. She walks out and comes back and says she can't find it. She then proceeds to accuse me of stealing it. I had my phone in my pocket and I showed it to her, told her I had no need for her phone, but I will check out for it. She demands I turn out my pockets, and she wanted to check behind the register to make sure I hadn't hidden it. The night manager's there at this point and just tells me to do what she says. It gets to the point where they also go through my locker in the back of the store. Mind you, I only had a few minutes before she comes in accusing me. And then going through my car. How the hell did I manage that when I have to walk right next to her to get to it? After proving I doesn't have it, he gets angrier and says I must have stolen it because I'm a pathetic loser working retail that can't afford a real phone. Normally, I'm a shy, introverted guy that doesn't say much and is polite, but I just tilted into oblivion. Told her she was a stuck-up, entitled that needed a ducking attitude adjustment, that I had no need for a phone that was better, because mine works just fine, and that her phone wouldn't be fit to wipe my ass with. Lame, but I was so angry I couldn't really think. I still had the job the next day. Story 5. Had a woman come into my red-themed department store asking about cameras. We aren't trained in every individual camera, so we usually just refer to the item cards on display near the device that lists the basic specs and features. She wanted to know why one, which seemingly had better specs, was priced lower than another. Best we could give her was, I don't know, that's just the way it is. The entire time she's berating my teammate who I'd been called to assist and starts ripping into me, telling me she should have just gone to PC Richardson's instead of my store. After finally deciding on one, I ring her out, where she continues to Karen about the service and knowledge level. I asked if she wanted a replacement plan, which is standard practice on all electronics purchases. She was like, "Are you kidding me? I've never had a worse experience and there's no way I'm giving you any more money." I smiled and told her, "Well, next time, ma'am, there's always PC Richardson's." She was pissed. "What did you just say to me?" I repeated myself. "Well, I should just go return this right now." "Sure thing, guest services at the From Can definitely help you with that. Just make sure you have your receipt handy." Story 6. I used to work at a Starbucks in an area where owners, professional athletes, and the like lived. One of our regulars was some guy who had spent his life wallowing in orange spray tan and had the whitest hair one could imagine. Every day he would come in and order a green tea, literally a tea bag with hot water. No matter what, there was always something wrong with it. Too hot, too cold, cup was weird, whatever. Anyway, one day during my last 2 weeks, this guy comes in when we're being slammed. He orders and I call out, "Green tea latte for X." Notice I did not say green tea. He comes up and snaps, "Excuse me, it was a green tea. It's literally water and a tea bag. How stupid can you be?" I turn toward him, look him dead in the eye and loudly go, "That's not even your ducking order. Every time you come in here, it's something else. If we're so stupid, then go to another location." He stepped back and didn't say anything after that. Story 7. I worked at a big-name office supply store for 2 years and dealt with all kinds of bullcrap. I don't take well to customers treating low-wage people like crap. A few summers ago, I'd come home after working at that office supply store and decided I wanted ice cream. Low wage or not, I had worked a few extra hours and decided to invite the single mom neighbor and her kids to come for ice cream since I knew she was struggling too. It was the beginning of summer and there were a line 20 people long, but no deal. You wait your turn. There was a woman a few people ahead of me who spotted one of the employees on their break, leaning out an extra window and talking to a friend who had dropped by. This woman decided to lean out of the line and scream up to the windows, "We're out here waiting and she's just chatting with her friends instead of doing her job," etc. I lost my temper and leaned out and said, "Ma'am, please, what's the problem here? You're waiting for ice cream, not the cure for cancer. Anyone who works hard is entitled to a break, and especially when low-wage employees deal with holes like you, they need it." The entire line started chuckling and looking at her. She turned beet red and went silent. I hope she felt more embarrassed than she ever had. Because seriously, it's ducking ice cream. Don't be a Karen. Story 8. I offered a very minor celebrity in the UK who was in town to do a pantomime, a store card, that we have to offer everyone. And his response was, "I don't need 5 CO off. I could pay your wages for 10 years from one job. Don't you know who I am?" So I decided to lie. Not a clue. I then called my boss, who I knew didn't watch any soaps, on the tannoy and asked him if he knew said celeb. He said, "Sorry, no, should I?" Then I asked the customer behind him who said no. She was just getting involved or she genuinely didn't know, I have no idea. But that lady was a legend. Then he said, "Sam Kane, Brookside, Coronation Street." I finished with, "Nope, still don't know you." "So, you sure you don't want to take advantage of the 5 CO discounts? It means you save $3.55. He walked out. My manager complimented me on my store card pitch. It was a good afternoon. Story 9. Not me, but a former assistant manager of mine was definitely not shy about calling out rude customers and shoplifters. My top 3 that I witnessed myself are, in 1, a customer who was also one of those extreme couponers that was sort of a regular at our store, was always difficult and argumentative, usually because she was always trying to get away with using multiple coupons that did not match anything she was buying. She also tried to get away with using expired coupons. So whenever a cashier would tell her she couldn't use the coupon, she would start getting verbally abusive. One day, I had the unfortunate luck of her at my register. And as expected, the same crap show began. I called for a manager, and once the assistant manager saw who it was, she flipped out on the customer. She had had it with that lady. She told the customer to leave the store that instant. The lady, of course, fights back, verbally. My assistant manager was getting more and more pissed off. What really set her off is when the lady screamed at her to go duck herself and that she was a fat, ugly Karen. My assistant manager immediately fires back by saying, "No, you go duck yourself, Karen. Every goddamn time you come here, you always start your crap. I'm sick of it. We're all sick of it. Get the duck out now or I'll call the police." The lady thought she was bluffing for some stupid reason and encouraged her to do just that. And she did. The lady then left, too. A group of teens that in the store are messing around with some toys in the toy aisle. My assistant manager was keeping an eye on them the whole time, making sure they weren't trying to steal anything. They weren't. And soon they grew bored and started walking to the front of the store to leave. However, one particular teen in the group made a mess of a few toys by not putting them back in their correct spots. So she approaches him, does that "come here" thing with her finger and said, "You, follow me." She takes him back to the toy aisle and told him straighten up the mess he made. All the while, she's giving him a lecture about respect and how he was being very disrespectful by making a mess and then attempting to leave without cleaning it up. Meanwhile, his friends are all laughing at him. There was a man walking around the store, eating a McDonald's hamburger with the wrapper still on, but opened and rolled down some so he wouldn't get his hands all greasy and crap. When he was done with hamburger, my assistant manager happened to spot the wrapper bunched up and tossed onto a random shelf. She left it there and went to speak to the customer. She asked if he enjoyed his burger. He said yes. Then she asked what he didn't with the wrapper. He said he had put it in his pant pocket. She asks that he show her the wrapper. Of course he couldn't produce it. So like with the teen, she tells him to follow her. He does, and she points to the wrapper he claimed was in his pocket. She tells him, quite sternly, to throw it away in a garbage can where it belongs. She keeps going, saying stuff like, "Is that what you do at home? Do you live there? Do you not know what a trash can is and what its purpose is for? Why do you think it's okay to toss your trash wherever you want?" Story 10. Going to get buried, but I've got two owned, managed a Little Caesars pizza joint for a bit. One night, some guy comes in and tells my counter girl we screwed up his food last time, so this time it's free. My cashier perfectly explains the return. We made a mistake policy and asked the guy's name. Since we have a book, we write them in. The guy starts losing it and yelling at my employee. I calmly walk over to her and ask her to go in the back and call this guy out for swearing at a young girl. How he is a piece of crap. You have no respect. Get the duck out and don't ever come back. The random customer in the lobby gave me a high five. Second story, I was actually the customer at a Little Caesars. It's Prolil 5 to close. I roll in and ask for a hot and ready since I'm headed to a friend's house and I don't want to show up empty-handed. Tells me it will be about a minute since it's still in the oven and they have to cut it. My first thought was sweet fresh pizza. After I pay and move to the side, a lady walks in and asks for 2 pizzas. The kid behind the counter tells her it will be about 3 minutes. At this point, the lady starts losing her crap. This is bull crap. It should be hot and ready. I should not have to wait. The kid behind the counter is still in high school and trying to do his best, so I step in. I slam my hand on the counter and say, "Lady, and you ducking kidding me right now?" I said, "What gives you the right to talk to someone like that? Over 3 minutes. Everywhere you go, you have to wait to at least pay. How important are you that you can't wait for 3 minutes for hot, right out of the oven pizzas?" She was silent. As I looked up, the kid in the back gave me a few fist pumps. When the first 2 pizzas came out, I offered her mine so she could get back to her important life faster. She declined and said that she can wait. The next time I stopped in, it was the same 2 guys, gave me my pizza and said this one is on us. After that, they would always hook my up with crazy bread. Story 11. This is my manager's story, but I'll tell it because I'm in it. Worked for a few years at a cafe in Brooklyn. My first ever job in high school and into college. All in all, I was there for about 3 years. With this time, I became an expert barista waitress. I knew the regulars and their orders well enough to have them ready by the time they walked in the door, trained all the new employees, was the manager-owner's right hand in all things cafe related. This particular event happened on a Saturday night. Because we were well known in the area and always pretty busy, we often stayed open until 1 or 2 on Friday and Saturday nights. A group of 7 came in at about midnight, and I always jump at the chance to serve big tables because it can potentially mean big tips. But let me tell you, this was the worst ducking group I had ever served. They changed tables twice for literally no reason. The gentleman demanded we give him his drink in one of the specialty cups on the wall, something I've never done for anyone because those cups are on display to be purchased, so on and so forth. When taking their orders, the special cup gentleman's wife insisted she didn't want anything, and I said, "Are you sure? Can I get you a water?" But no, she doesn't want anything. I take the rest of the orders, make the drinks, then come back 7-8 minutes later and serve them. As soon as I finish setting the drinks down and walk back behind the counter, Mr. Special Cup follows me there, even though customers aren't allowed there, and throws a ducking tantrum because I didn't bring his wife a drink, full-blown screaming at me in this tiny cafe about how incompetent I am. This is the worst service he's ever received in his life. He's been coming here for years, but he'll never come back here again, and I should know that I'm personally to blame. My manager, upon hearing this guy berating me, comes over to see what's up. SC just continues to rip into me. My manager should be ashamed to have ever hired me. I should be fired immediately. He's going to tell all of his friends never to step foot in this establishment ever again, blah blah. But then my manager stands up for me like I've never been stood up for before. "Sir, another dirty word has been working here for years, and I've never once received a single complaint about her. In all honesty, she's the most experienced and probably the best server in this cafe. If you are having a problem with her, it's because you are the issue. Now, I've never seen you here once before, so I can say with certainty that you won't be missed should you choose never to come back. I'm not going to ask you to pay for your drinks, although I should considering how disrespectful you've been to my staff, but I am going to ask you to leave immediately. They left, and I immediately walked into the bathroom and cried, partially because I was just so shook up and angered by what the customer had said to about me, but mostly because I was so grateful to have a manager willing to stick his neck out like that for me. Cheers to you, boss man. Story 12. I work at a concert venue where I normally check bags and do security until Warped Tour came around. The food vendors were understaffed, so I was moved to a stand where we never had enough food, and I was the only one doing food prep, which I hadn't learned how to properly do. About 2 hours into cutting deals with people who ordered something, I ran out of saying, "Oh, chicken sandwich? Sorry, just ran out. I feel really bad, but I have burgers. Can that work? I'll throw in some fries." Someone starts giving me crap. My line is backed up like 15 customers as it had been for an hour now, and this person somehow thinks that I can do anything about my current situation besides leave. I didn't even need to say anything. I looked the Karen in the eyes, shut my own for a few seconds, took a deep breath, and exhausted hunched over the bar. When I look up at my line of now 20 people, I make eye contact with the guy behind her in line. He turns the girl around and says, "We're here to see a concert, get drunk, and have fun, while this kid is stuck slaving away making food for people all day. How about you leave the ducking kid alone? I'll refund you right now. What did you get?" For every one horrible person I deal with, there are at least 5 who keep a smile and make me happy to work there. Then there's that guy who brings a tear to my eye by looking out for me. Story 13. Not technically me, but it's my story. I managed, in person, customer service for a place in a location with a lot of crafty rich people. One day, this middle-aged man with a Mercedes and a big gold Ivy League ring on his hand was yelling at me about something. I don't even remember what. I'm a 5'2" female, I was maybe 20 at the time, and this grown-ass man is leaned over my desk, waving his arms and yelling in my face. A few minutes into his rant, he backhands a brochure rack over my side of the counter, and it smashes on the floor. All of a sudden, we hear a loud bang, then a door slam. The customer freezes and my 6'4" assistant manager appears, as if out of nowhere. He gets face to face, well, as close as he can give that he has 6'8" inches on the angry customer with him, and just goes in his deepest, angriest voice with his booming Bajan accent. "Do you have a ducking problem?" Before he can finish the sentence, the man is out the door, into his Mercedes and down the street. I never had a problem with him again. The assistant manager was in the back room eating lunch, watching this unfold through one of those windows that looks like a mirror from the outside. He usually let me handle my crap because I was the manager, but as soon as the brochure rack was in the air, it was a different story. Story 14. I used to work in a clothing store that was very long and very narrow. Basically a hallway lined with clothes. I had a woman shopping with her adult son and his wife who were in back. I was in the front of the store, folding shirts and then bringing them back to put them away, which required me to frequently pass by them. I didn't think anything of what I was doing until the woman came up to pay and said to me, "I did not appreciate you following me around the store." I was shocked to hear her say this, since I thought it was pretty obvious I was putting shirts away. "I wasn't following you," I said. "Yes, you were," she said, "and I do not appreciate being treated like a thief." I don't know why I snapped on this woman. I wasn't having a particularly bad day, and I had dealt with far worse customers than her before, but there was just something about her arrogance and the wrongful accusation. Not that I would have even been in the wrong to have been keeping an eye on her in the first place. That just made me lose it. "Well, I'm sorry you're so paranoid," I said. "Paranoid?" she said. "Yes, because it should have been really obvious that I was putting shirts away and not following you, so you seem to have a problem with paranoia." She started to say something else, but then her son stopped her and said, "Just let it go," he said. "Thank you," I said to him, and then he screamed at me, "Don't think I'm taking you up. I'll take you out before I'll take you up." I was in pretty deep at this point anyway, so I saw nothing wrong with pushing it a little further. "Do I need to clock out so I can take you up on that?" I said. And that was when the shift leader came back from her break to send me on mine. I clocked out and left her to deal with them. I figured at best that I would be in deep crap for talking to customers that way, and at worst I'd be fired, but I really didn't care. Like I said before, for some reason this woman and her son just pushed me over the ducking edge, and I really didn't care what the consequences were. To my shock though, when I came back from my break, the shift leader told me she had told them that it was my job to follow customers around and check up on them to make sure they weren't stealing anything and that I hadn't done anything wrong. I don't know what happened in the conversation they had, but I can't imagine that would have been the response if the customers had recounted the full conversation to her. I still can't believe I got away with that. Story 15. So this was about 15 years ago, but still one of my favorite stories when talking about a whole customers. I used to work at a Jack in the Box in a small town. It was late one night and I was on the drive-thru. I was the manager on duty, and several employees were too sick to come in. So naturally, we were super slammed that night. So I have this guy who orders a crap load of food and is being really rude over the comms. And once he gets to the window, he sets the money on the sill, and as I open it, money blows away under his vehicle. He said if I wanted it so bad, I would have to come outside and get it. Well, his wife thought different. She got out and retrieved the money and apologized for her whole husband. Then I get their order done together and hand it to them and say thank you and have a good night. Well, he didn't pull away. After a minute, he honks, not just a little beep, but a blaring solid honk until I come to the window. As I open the window, I am blasted in the face with an order of French fries. Those fries are ducking cold, you fat idiot. They definitely were not cold as I felt the heat when they hit me in the face. So instead of yelling and freaking out, I calmly apologize and tell the guy I will take care of it. Just so happens that we had fries cooking at this exact moment. So I grab some tongues and grab fries that are sizzling in the deep fryer and put them right into a container, salt them, then bag them. I had this bag to him, and as he immediately opens the bag to reach inside, I wait, watching and hoping. It happens this asshat Magoo burns the crap out of his hands on the fries. I look over and the wife is laughing. I say thank you once again, followed with, sorry I was a fat idiot tonight, but at least I'm not a piece of crap with burnt fingers. I slam the window shut and the guy slowly pulls away. So the next day arrives and I go in for my shift. The manager on duty takes me to the office and closes the door. Tells me that she had an interesting convo with an upset customer, complaining that I was rude to him and embarrassed him in front of his family. The manager had watched the footage from the night before and guessed it was this guy. So after listening to him rant and rave about how crafty of an employee I am and that I should be fired, she calmly stopped him and told him, "Sir, you assaulted one of my employees last night by throwing food at them, then saying some very hurtful things that, in my opinion, were highly inappropriate. After I viewed the incident on the film, I had to do my duty and report you to the police department. Lie. And sir, you are no longer welcome at this restaurant." She recorded the whole convo for me to listen to. After laughing our asses off, I had one PF the best nights at work. It being a small town, there wasn't much for fast food options, and that a hole tried coming in again, we never served him. I did serve his wife and kids, just never him. The wife actually was very nice and even thanked us for booting him. Story 16. I've been working in hospitality for 6 years now and thankfully have only ever deliberately been intentionally rude to a guest on one occasion. At the hotel I worked for before my current one, we had this guy come in who behaved like a douche lord the second he arrived. And one day I was tired of his crap. See, members of the hotel's loyalty program get special perks that get slightly better with each level, and this guy was at the highest level. One of those benefits is having water and a snack in your room on arrival and only on arrival. Well, this guy wanted a bunch of waters every day and would come to the desk and basically berate people into giving them up because he was too cheap to buy them from the sweet shop or Walmart or whatever. First, let me say that while it is very nice to be a high-tier rewards member, when literally half the hotel is high status, it becomes less special. This guy was clearly not used to being a small fish in a big pond, and the whole "don't you know who I am" attitude is really dumb. Second, every rewards member profile has info from all your past stays, including when you stay, how often you stay at certain properties, and most importantly, how many service recoveries you have. For those not in the biz, the service recovery is like an official recording of when crap went down that stays there as a sort of permanent record. Most of the time, guest issues are handled in-house and don't get one. But if you act like a total a-hole, you better believe you're getting one. As you can tell, the service recovery, their frequency and content can tell you lots about a particular guest. Most guests have around 0 to 3 incidents a year that require one. This guy had 22 from the last year alone, so either he's staying in the crappiest hotels possible, is very unlucky, or is deliberately complaining to get free stuff. Back to the incident. He comes down to ask for another water, and I only give him one this time, and tell him more can be purchased from the sweet shop, after which he gets all pissed and starts going on about how he's a high-tier rewards member and stays all the time. Blah, blah, blah. Usual prissy customer crap. As he starts to walk away, I call him on his bullcrap and tell him I can see from his profile that he's only ever stayed at our property twice in the last year, this being the second and the other being months ago. We have repeat guests that fill the hotel every week, so from a statistics standpoint, he's not very valuable. I also let him know all I've learned from his many service recoveries, which is when he swaggers up to the desk to try and intimidate me, saying stuff like, "You really want to do this right now?" and then storms off in a huff. The next day I heard my GM told him basically the same thing, refused him any more water, and told him it would be best if he just left and stayed somewhere else if the hotel wasn't meeting his needs. Basically told him to duck off in that saccharine customer services that I'm sure retail employees are familiar with. Story 17. When I worked at a CVS a couple of years ago, I had a husband and wife come in right as I opened up. They were usuals at my store, and they were a pain every time. So I braced myself for the fight I'd have to put up, just to cave to what they wanted. Anyway, as I'm the only one in the store, I make sure to inform them that the coupon they plan to use can't be on sale items. The husband takes offense to this, saying that he knows how to use a coupon and can read, and I should mind my own business. It's too early for this crap, but I just take it in stride and go back up to the register where my Red Bull is waiting for me. I down the Red Bull, and those two are ready to check out. I'm silent as I scan his items, so I'm not berated for trying to make small talk. Halfway through the transaction, I noticed all the items are on sale and inform him. He and the wife get irate, yelling how he was supposed to know that, how it's my fault for not telling him and the coupon should work to make up for my mistake. He even goes as far to try and grab me from over the counter. I grab the baseball bat that I kept next to me for just this occasion. Touch me, mother ducker, and I promise you they'll be carrying you and your wife out on a stretcher. Get the duck out now before I duck and snap. They took off out of the store and never saw them again. My boss and her boss reviewed the tape after I informed her about what happened, and they believe I was justified. I was a legend at the store for what happened and was cathartic as hell. Story 18. I was asked to cut the locks off any lockers that were not recorded as paid for. I was the one asked to do it because I opened the gym and any lockers used and not paid for were clearly in violation of the way of things. I didn't like the idea of it, but I agreed. I took too long to get to all of them, so a client came in just as I was cutting the lock off her locker. She flipped out on me, called me idiot, went to my manager, told him I'm idiot, and insisted on talking to the VP because she was sure she could and should get me fired. No ducking way. She didn't just insult me, she insulted everyone who has ever truly been a victim of oppression. I am good at customer service. I put up with everything with a smile and a willingness to laugh at myself. I cater to the needs of my customers and clients, and it's important to me that I make their experience as positive as possible. But yeah, this situation threw that all out the window. I told her she's a ducking Karen and walked away, right in front of my manager. My manager gave me paid leave, and that was that. Well, once I got back, I also went through every customer record and matched it against all the locker records, making sure it was properly up to date. And I also told my manager that I would not be cutting locks off anymore, and he agreed. Story 19. I was working at an electronics store a few years back. So here I was at computers. This guy comes into the wrong department and asks us where the tablets are, I said in mobile. He didn't want to walk over there and wanted me to go search for it. All right, fine. Check stock. We have one. Commence search. So I go over to the mobile department and ask the managers where the tablets were. He said near the front. All right, check the front for 5 minutes. They were there, but not the one I was looking for. A minor annoyance, all right. Walk by customer who is searching for me, making sure I didn't just leave him. He asks what's taking so long. Told him that there is one in stock. We just need to find it. Check with mobile manager. Mobile manager said, check the shipper. I need keys for the cages near the shippers to check those out. Manager doesn't have keys. Go search for keys. All right, not in mobile. Have to go back to PC. Check shippers. Not there. I'm frantically running back and forth on both sides of the store. Not back there. Check with mobile manager. He blows me off and says, check again. Okay, check front and back. Not there. I start to get visibly annoyed because nobody's helping me find this. We're packed and the manager won't give me more than 20 seconds to explain what I need just where I might find it. Customers pestering me again. He's annoyed too, asking me where it is, why it's taking so long, why he even came here. Usual bullcrap whining. At this point, he's following me around the store while I'm trying to find it with zero help in an area that isn't even my area of expertise. So I'm checking the front for the third time. It's not there, the customer finally says in such a smug tone. If I knew it would take this long, I'm just gonna order it off the internet. At this point, I'm annoyed to all hell. All right, sir, you can order it off the internet. Sorry we couldn't find it. Have a nice day. And just promptly walk off back to my department. He just stands there hopeless, like his stupid bluff was supposed to make me find it faster. I left him, he went to the correct department's manager, and the manager then helped him find it instantly. That manager came back to me and said, I did something bad, and to meet him in the back so we could talk. That talk consisted of, you should have been more specific when asking what you needed. I told him exactly what the customer told me. You should have never left the customer. I told him that he said he was going to order it online. That's still unacceptable. Retail is hell on earth for employees. Remember that every day you go into a store that these people are underpaid and overworked. Please respect the people that work there. Story 20. Well, I wasn't the one working, but one time went into a corner bakery and I was waiting in line, trying to decide what to eat as I was about to go up to order. I live in the South, by the way. Your typically former Southern debutante trophy wife, who is no longer happy in life and had gained a bunch of weight, storms up to the counter red with anger. She starts yelling at the ladies at the counter, one older, sweet black lady, and I think a girl who is trying to hold a job. She ducking loses it, saying how she ordered extra chicken with her salad because she's on a special diet and she needs the extra protein. The lady at the register politely goes, "Oh, no problem, ma'am. We'll get you more chicken right away." With the sweetest smile, Lady wasn't having it. Lady Ducking snaps again and goes, "Well, you should have gotten it right the first time. You two are so pathetic. You both work here and can't even get this right." Then 16-year-old slowly begins to break down crying, and the older lady looks like she's about to follow suit. She continues to go on to say how they won't amount to anything in life and are basically useless. At this point, I'm fuming because I hate seeing people abused, especially when they were so kind and eager to fix the mistake. After about 30 more seconds of me trying to stay calm, she says, "You two deserve to be fired. I can't believe they would hire people so incompetent. I want to speak to a manager. I am on a strict special diet, and you've ruined it. My diet requires extra protein. If you can't accommodate me on that, then you deserve to be let go." She goes on for a bit more, mentioning her diet every 2 seconds, and I finally ducking snap with, "Are you on a Karen diet too? Because that doesn't seem to be working either." Went on to say, if she lose the stick up her ass, maybe she'd lose a few pounds and while she was at it, possibly gain some class. Her jaw ducking dropped and she let out the most pretentious scoff I've ever heard and said how she's never been so disrespected in her life. Storms off saying how she deserves to be treated with dignity and attempts to slam the door. Meanwhile, the two at the register are trying so hard not to laugh. At this point, they thanked me and offered to give me a free drink, haha, which was so sweet I refused and gave them an extra big tip. Also spoke to the manager to make sure if the lady writes a review online, the two girls don't get fired. Story 21. It was an Amish guy that brought out a combination of Julia Sugarbaker and the evil queen from Snow White in me. Years ago, I managed a supermarket in a very small town. A group of Amish people had recently purchased several farms and set up a community in the area. While I'm sure that most Amish people are good, honest folks, many members of this community weren't. By the time of what became known as the incident, several Amish people had already been banned from every bar, restaurant, and several retail establishments for fighting, shoplifting, and general bad behavior. Word gets around, so my employees were keeping an eye on them in the store. The day before, one of my cashiers had caught a young Amish woman shoplifting a roll, 10 cans of Skoal chewing tobacco, and called me up front. She had watched her hide them in her clothing. When she checked out, before giving her the total, the cashier asked her politely if she was going to pay for the Skoal. The Amish woman did give the tobacco back to the cashier, saying she forgot she had it, paid for the rest of her purchases, and left. The next day, an older Amish man came in asking for the manager. The girl up front called me to the front of the store. He then told me he wanted to speak to the manager. I told him I was the manager and asked how I could help. He then asked to speak to the real manager. I knew where this was going, both because I'm female and the near-miss shoplifting from the day before. I let him know I was all he was going to get manager-wise. He went on to try to explain to me, in a very slow, disappointed, that I was obviously too stupid to understand manner, that he wouldn't tolerate his people being watched in my store. I explained in my very calm, yet intense, if I could hit you with sheer for CEO will I would manner, that I would not tolerate shoplifting in my store. I told him I had witnessed the exchange and everything was done in accordance to store policy that I established. He then said something like, I would expect this from a store full of women. I really don't remember what happened next, but according to more than one employee, I got 6 inches taller. My voice became very low and quiet, and I backed the guy out the door while banning him and all his ilk from my store forevermore. I had gone Old Testament. A few weeks later, a few older Amish people, both men and women in the delegation, showed up, told me they had come to the community to see that things went better, because at this point, nobody in town would do business with them. I lifted the ban, and they were good to their word, and there were no problems after that. Story 22. It just happened to me last night, so duck it. So I work in a bar one night a week. I'm in production, so generally I don't have to interact with customers, but once in a while, I'm compelled to get involved if someone gets a little rowdy. Let me explain that this is a very rare occurrence. It's a craft beer bar with live music. The owner grew up in the neighborhood, and most people that come there are respectful and pleasant. The place is separated into 2 parts. When you first walk in, there's the main bar and a smallish stage. You go down a hallway, turn a corner, and now you're in a larger room, larger stage, smaller bar. There's someone stationed in the hallway to check if the people coming into the big room have a wristband that indicates they've paid to see the band there. Otherwise, they stay in the main bar. So last night, this guy that's a regular has a few too many and walks right by the girl in the hallway and flips her off. She's a nice person, but still needs to do her job, so she asks to see his wristband. He responds by telling her to duck off. Hallway girl gets manager, he's telling manager to duck off. Hallway girl comes and gets me, says there's a problem. I go check it out. Drunk guy is arguing with manager. She's telling him to leave, he's refusing. I step in, tell him it's time to go. He turns on me, so I grab him and firmly walk him to the door. He's of course protesting the whole way. I get him outside and tell him, goodbye, and turn to walk back in. Here's the best part. As I get back inside, he yells at me, fascist! I was laughing so hard I almost fell over. But wait, there's more. 15 minutes later, the guy's back, yelling at the manager about how he stole his property, and he wants it back now. Meaning, he thought he left his credit card at the bar. He didn't, and now he was going to make a big stink again. Again, I grab the guy, drag him out the door, and now he's in my face saying I assaulted him. I'm a big bully, a fascist, a pussy, etc. Okay, dude, whatever. Owner comes out now, they start getting into it, I'm done. I go back to my job, and there's no more issues. I'd like to mention I've been close friends with the owner for 20 years. A lot of our regulars and key employees are people he's known since high school. We're like a family there. I'm a really easygoing dude. It takes a lot to piss me off. But if you disrespect my family in our house, I will come for you on story 23. So as a lumber associate, I'm stuck on the panel saw all day as I usually am. This married couple needs to build a bookcase and need my help figuring out the dimension. So I take time to help them so we can figure it all out. But this couple is taking a very long time to figure out what they want. So automatically I go to the next couple online and begin to ask what exactly they need. It's this Hispanic guy and his wife, and they need help with molding. Being that I understand Spanish but don't speak it too well, he begins to ask me a question in Spanish while I answer him in English. There seems to be no miscommunication during this verbal exchange as we aren't speaking the same language, yet we understand each other. So he asks me if I can cut a certain piece of molding at a 40-degree angle, and I explain to him that our panel saw can only cut up and down, left and right, not diagonal. He proceeds to keep asking me that same question as I calmly repeat myself politely over and over again. After asking me the same question for about the 5th time, he stops, looks at his wife, and tells her in Spanish something to the effect of, "Is this guy just a ducking idiot, or is there just something wrong with him?" while tapping his temples with his index fingers. An extremely rude gesture. Let me preface this by saying that I hadn't eaten all day, and my sense of restraint gets a little messed up when there isn't any food inside me. I get in his face, and in verbatim I yell, "How many ducking times do I have to tell you that we do not do those cuts?" I admit I was wrong for reacting in such a hostile manner, but it just came out as a sort of reflex. This sends him over the edge, and he asks who the hell I thought I was talking to. I tell him that he can't go around name-calling and berating others. I realize that this could get very ugly very quickly, so I walk away and try to help the first couple that I was initially helping before I do anything reckless out of impulse. As I try to go back and help the others, I hear him yelling in Spanish, telling his wife that they should leave before he drags my face through the floor. The other customers calm me down, and the guy just disappeared after that. I enjoy working at HD, but days like these make me want a GTFO of this place. I guess it's just a normal day in NYC though. Story 24. My mother owned a dry cleaner, and one of her customers flipped out on her because she said we misplaced her clothing. She tried talking to her calmly and explained to her that whatever she dropped off was picked up and paid for. I believe it was one blouse, so we didn't lose it. She then went off on her, and I basically told the lady to duck off and get the hell out. I never curse in front of my parents, but that lady pissed me off yelling at my mom, who worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. She then told me to watch myself because she knew people who would get my chink ass. Story 25. My first job was working in a McDonald's when I was super young. My first day was wicked, 2-hour shift. They put me on the dining area, and I went about cleaning trays, mopping floors during the 5 p.m. rush, and went home feeling good about my first day of work. A few days later, I went in for another short shift. I was put on the tills this time with an experienced staff member who helped me through everything. As the rush got to its peak, all the tills are loaded and there's people everywhere. As an anxious 15-year-old, this was pretty hard to deal with. But I coped until a lady come to my till and gave me both barrels. Ghastly woman. She ordered 2 cheeseburger Happy Meals, 2 Cokes, and a filet of fish meal with a chocolate shake. Still remember it 16 years later. She was rude straight away, rolling her eyes when I read her order back, forcing the money into my hand, then hand on hips and a big wide sigh when my trainer gave her the food. No thank you or anything. We carried on serving, then all of a sudden I saw her, like a rampaging troglodyte, tossing people aside as she stormed up to my till, interrupting a customer, waving the 2 burgers in my face. "Are you stupid? Are you slow? I asked for chicken nugget Happy Meals." My trainer attempted to calm the lady down, but there was no stopping her. She bellowed and shouted every word under the sun at us, saying I was incompetent and other things I've forgotten. It was loud and shouty. She was a spitter. Ugh. Putting my cap down lower to cover the fact I was welling up, I said to the lady that I did reread her order and that maybe she should listen better. My trainer said nothing. The lady erupted and called me a git and said, "Anyone could do this job better than you." From there, I walked away from her and my trainer, went to the side office and got an application form. I brought it back to the desk, and in front of a full restaurant, I slammed it down into the desk that was between myself and her and shouted, If you think you can do any better, maybe you should apply. Before walking away, tears streaming, I went and hid behind the bins and cried for 20 minutes. The shift manager came and spoke to me, said that I couldn't talk to customers like that. I was expecting the sack, but that didn't happen. From that day on, I worked a year on the dining area, never touched a till again, never saw that horrible woman. The guys on shift thought it was legendary. Story 26. Smoking age changed to 21 early last month in California. A usual customer comes in while another employee is working, who we've had a good dynamic with so far, except he's only 19. So she does her job and rejects selling him tobacco, Irvin, though he's been coming here for almost a year. His respectful, cool demeanor instantly turns hostile, and he starts calling her an ugly Karen and yada. I'm watching from cameras in my office and can hear everything, and I watch him blow up and walk out. She's used to this kind of crap working here, but this time I see her just sit on a chair and tilt her head down. When I walked out, she's kind of just staring at the floor. I've never seen her act like this before, and I barely managed to let out, "What was that?" And she starts bawling. So her dad has been at the hospital and might need surgery, but she decided not to tell anyone because that's just how she is. She doesn't want to drop her problems on anyone, and while keeping a smile all day, this cracked her and she just started crying. She wouldn't talk or anything, and it was way later that I really understood what was going on. So not only was he not 21, but he was using a fake ID now and trying to pass for 21 when he had already been a regular and used his actual ID showing he was 19, and she was smart enough to deny him. So about 2 weeks later, he walks in while I'm in the front alone, and I ask him for his ID. He pulls out whoever's ID it was, I'm guessing brother, cousin, and I grab it. Then I just put it in my pocket and tell him, "Turn around and walk out. If I ever see you in here again, I'll put a trespassing order on you." Do you know what that is? He didn't care what that was and blew up on me, from calling me a slur to blah blah, and I just kind of stared at him and nodded. When he saw that I wasn't budging, he threatened to call the police. I handed the phone and said, "Please, do it." Next thing completely threw me off guard. He was pissing himself. His piss was spreading across his shorts and started leaking down his legs. His voice started to crack as he walked backwards and eventually broke into tears before he bolted out. Haven't seen him since. Granted, I felt bad for the guy, and I did have to clean his piss, but if I ever tell her what really happened, I imagine it would make her day. Story 27. I've only snapped at a customer once. A few years ago when I was working in McDonald's. It was the evening rush hour, and the 2 other members of staff that were meant to be working the tills with me had called in sick. This meant that I was on my own trying to do 3 people's work in the same length of time. Impossible to say the least. After a couple of hours, I was exhausted, trying to help out the new guy on drive-thru, running food out to customers who had decided they were going to sit down without their food, taking orders 5 people ahead so that I could try and get it ready a bit quicker, etc. It was then I noticed a guy at the back of the queue, referred to as Banana Nugget from here. After a couple of minutes, Nugget deems it a brilliant idea that he should shout about how it's taking so long. Bad move. I'm clearly going as fast as I can. Another minute goes by, and Banana Nugget shouts again. This time, a guy in front of him in the queue tells him to shut up. This perks me up a tad. At least someone has noticed that I'm trying. After about 5 minutes, he gets to the front. Me. "Hi, can I take your order, please?" Banana Nugget. "I don't know. Will it take half an hour for you to get it together?" Me, trying to ignore the piles of sarcasm. "I doubt it, sir. What would you like?" DN. 2 black coffees. I mean, sure. Anything else? DN. How about another member of staff? I proceed to ignore this, take the money, and go to make the coffee. Cue an absolute bucket load of moaning and complaining from DN as I pass him his coffees. He says, "This has happened before. You know, I came in for 2 coffees and it took 10 minutes. So I very calmly lean in and say, "Well, I advise you don't come here anymore then, sir." I could have killed his family. I've never known someone to kick off so much. He tried to push the till on the floor, but they are stuck down, so he threw 1 coffee on the floor, the second at me. Luckily, I saw it coming, so it missed me. I pick up the cup, look at him. "Get the duck out before I duck and knock you out." This visibly shocked him. He just stood there, in silence, for what seemed like an eternity. He eventually shouted a few more things and stormed out. The second he left, the entire store erupted in applause. The rest of the shift was great. Story 28. This pompous ass came into my restaurant one afternoon with his wife, and one of my favorite coworkers ended up getting him as a table. Right off the bat, he started snapping his fingers at people to get their attention, cutting them off only to not say a word, having every type of passive-aggressive negative comment about the restaurant, ranging from the seats to the table to the drinks and so on. I wound up having to run his food to him, and when I got there, he was in the middle of scolding my friend on why our food was prepared a certain way. It's a Cajun restaurant owned by a dude from New Orleans. It's going to be on the weird side. So I go to set his food down once he stops talking. I hadn't even finished setting it down when he goes, "Where are the crackers?" To which I reveal my other hand, carrying as many packages as I could hold. But I smile for my friend's sake and say, "Oh, they're right here. I made sure to bring you extra." I then set his wife's food down, and again, before I'd even finished, he goes, "Where are her sides?" Which I say, "They're right here on the tray," grabbing them from the tray and setting them down. By this point, I'm fairly irked, but Genius here didn't seem to realize it, and he snaps at me and says, "Spoon?" while shaking his head like you would at a child. I had been sure to prepare this guy's food perfectly before I brought it out, so he would have no reason to send me back for anything, and I remembered his goddamn spoon. Smiling, I looked down at his plate and picked up the spoon resting in front of his stupid face and said, "Oh, well, here it is. How about that?" My coworker got a kick out of that one. Even the guy's wife was smirking a little. Story 29. I am from NY, but lived in San Diego for a few years, working as a sales manager at a Sprint store when 9/11 happened. Sprint's automated payment system was located in Lower Manhattan and was down for a couple weeks after. On a particularly slow day, a customer comes in to make a payment. I normally wouldn't take payments. We had customer service reps and an automated payment kiosk that took cash or credit. But since it was slow, I decided to help him. I complained about his 10-minute drive to my store and how annoying it was that the automated was down for a week. I politely apologized and explained the reason why. He continued to say how Sprint needs to get their act together, etc. I apologize again and say they are working on it. But there's so much going on down there, and thousands of people died, so we don't know how long it will be. Well, this guy keeps going, making a point to put complaining about his 10-minute drive and making the transaction take longer, as he wouldn't give me his cell number to pull up his account until he complained some more. Finally, I couldn't deal anymore. I tossed his debit card back at him and told him he's going to have to wait a few more minutes since I won't be helping him. He lost it, started screaming at me. I turned and walked towards the door to the back of the store as he's following behind me screaming how I'm going to lose my job. The CSR at the counter by the door thought he was going to swing at me. The other sales manager was working in the back and came out and he calmed down. I've never been so red and done nothing about it before or after. Really proud of myself for not knocking him out. He wanted to speak to the store manager who was off that day. The store manager calls him back and he goes on about how in a ticking time bomb, and he wouldn't have someone like that work for him. My boss already spoke to me and the other sales manager about what happened. He apologizes and tells the guy that he probably won't see me next time he comes into the store. He had no intention of firing me, but triggered the reaction from the guy he was looking for. The guy backed up and said, "Well, don't be too hard on him." I was just upset. Story 30. I was a manager at a big red craft supply store with a strict no receipt return policy. During the heavy hours of the day, the manager is required to be within 50-75 feet of the entrance so we can help customers as they walk in and keep an eye on the registers. A woman came in with a bag full of styrofoam balls and said she needed to return them, trying to hand them to me. Without reaching for them, I politely said, "Okay, if you could join the line, all returns are handled at the registers." She then huffed and complained about having to wait in line for a return, which she would have had to have done anywhere else, and entered the line of 2 people. I'm not paying too close attention, but I do hear that she doesn't have her receipt. Our cashier starts explaining the no receipt policy and lets her know if she pay with a card, we can pull it from that data. She says she doesn't want to do that, so the cashier starts to explain that she will need a photo ID, and the customer puts it on the counter and walks off before the cashier can finish telling her that anything without a receipt is returned for the lowest sold value in the past 90 days. Guess what? Styrofoam was just on sale last week. Cashier does her job anyway and scans in the items, keys in the customers, and totals it out. When the woman found out she would only getting back around $10 for what would have been about $60, she flipped. She started cursing, which caught my attention. And as soon as I looked over the woman, as throwing the balls at the cashier, shouting "phew" over and over, I cut her off right as she started to storm towards the door. Ahem. You listen to me right now. See that camera right there? It just saw everything you just did. Look closely at it. See? Now it has a better view of your face too. And even better, your driver's license is in our computer. Hey cashier, are you going to press charges? Damn straight. Karen just broke my glasses. And if we catch you in our store again, you will be arrested on the spot. She then started shouting at me, and we had to have her escorted out by the police. She did 14 months in jail and had to pay for the cashier's new glasses. Story 31. I'm a pizza delivery driver. A few months ago, it was a normal day so far until I had to deliver to a really shady apartment complex in the downtown area. Not so dangerous, but there were always people in that complex trying to get free food out of us. I pull up in a parking spot 1 minute earlier than my promised delivery time and give my customer a call. He immediately cuts me off on the phone and says, "You're late. I'm calling the manager." I tried to explain to him that I was in fact early, and his pizzas were totally still hot. He insisted that I was wrong and hung up the phone. Now I'm pissed. I flew almost literally back to my store to try and give my manager a heads up that a BS complaint was coming and to not give that man a damn thing. As I storm into my store, I hear the phone ringing. And who is it? None other than the number on my delivery ticket. I pick up and he immediately asks to speak to a manager. I tell him that I'm a manager and he can express his complaint directly to me. He said, "Your delivery driver was rude, late, and both of my pizzas were cold." Since he lied, I proceeded to let him know that he was speaking to said delivery driver, and that if he wants to lie to me, then I will personally make it my mission to make sure he never gets anything from our establishment ever again. He didn't know what to say, and ended up passing the phone to his girlfriend or whatever. Duck that guy, and may he forever be deprived of pizza. Story 32. I wasn't working, I was a customer. It was 28 years ago. I was at a fast food place, I think it was a Popeyes, in a mall food court, and my family were seated at a nearby table. I watched the customer in front of me throw an unreasonable tantrum at the cashier to try to get a freebie. Then, when the cashier didn't budge, she demanded the manager. All the while I'm standing there, waiting for her tantrum to be over so I can order. The manager listened to her lie about the cashier and started to offer her the desired freebie. I was sick of her bullcrap and sick of waiting, so I spoke up and told the manager everything that had happened. Told him the woman was a liar and the cashier had been exemplary, and that if he gave the woman anything or punished the cashier in any way, I would take my business elsewhere. Karen threw a tantrum at me and stomped off without her food. Boss tried to comp me a meal, but I insisted on paying because I hadn't done anything special. I had merely gotten pissed off. She was wasting my time and told the truth. Cashier gave me Karen's food free in addition to what I ordered, since it had already been made or packaged and would go to waste, and was very friendly to me every time she saw me afterward. My family wanted to know what had taken so long and why I got so much food. Story 33. Oh goody. I finally get to tell the story of how I once punched somebody in the face. This is my only story of punching someone in the face. So it's my favorite story of punching someone in the face. Several years ago at Walmart, I am in line behind a very mean, very disrespectful, and very large woman. This woman in cussing the cashier up one side down the other and complaining that she is too slow. This goes on for a few minutes, and I watch as the poor cashier, who undoubtedly needed this not-so-awesome job, purse her lips, stay silent, and continue her work while being rapid-fire berated. I only have a few things. I put those things down on the conveyor belt. I size the situation up. I am small. I have never hit a living soul except my older brother when we were kids. I know this lady will kick my ass without thinking about it if I speak up. Oh, but I am from Texas and I am Irish, so I got to say something. I really have no choice. I'm also fast. I was scared before I even opened my mouth and started telling the lady off, but I just couldn't stop. She called the cashier a retard. I snapped and informed everyone around me that this woman was a piece of living, breathing crap. The woman's head swung around to look at me, and when it did, I landed a right hook beautifully on her lower cheek. I got a glance off at the cashier, who had a look that was a grand mix of gratitude and glee on her face. Then I ran like hell, and nobody stopped me. I booked it, never looked back. I drove home shaking like a damn leaf. Moral: don't mess with the ladies of Walmart in here in the South, y'all. Story 34. This one's actually quite bad. I very nearly lost my job. I used to work at a McDonald's in one of the worst neighborhoods in the city. We'd get plenty of arseholes on busy nights, but Sundays were the worst. It wasn't very busy, but for some reason the arsehole to decent customer ratio went from about a 1/100 to a 1/15 on Sundays. I worked with my girlfriend. I was in the kitchen. She'd deal with the customers. I didn't enjoy working with my girlfriend simply because I love her more than any other person in my life. I suffer from bipolar. She suffers from borderline. We found each other and helped each other get through bad times. I'd get really annoyed whenever I heard a rude customer bad-mouthing her. This night, a guy walked in, ordered a meal. He got his meal, but he insisted that he didn't get the whole thing, which was bullcrap. He got really angry and started verbally abusing my girlfriend, calling her a fat with no life. He then threw his Coke at her, at which point I practically ran out of the kitchen, grabbed a fry basket, and brandished it, yelling at him, "Get the duck out of my store." The guy was one of those "you want to fight, eh?" type of S and didn't leave immediately, so I gave into the rage and whacked the dude with the fry basket really hard. I'm usually a relaxed person, but after a crafty night, I was just not in the mood. I'm actually super lucky that he immediately left after being hit by the fry basket and didn't bother calling the cops or anything. My manager was furious. She never liked me or my girlfriend to begin with, and immediately told us to leave, and that we'd both be fired as soon as she told the store manager. I argued with her for a while, but then the next day I got a call from the store manager, who had always been a mate, asked for my side of the story, and I got off with a 2-week suspension. Not proud of what I did, but yeah. Story 35. I was finally taking off as a manager of a therapy department and had just trained my first new employee after my other therapist had been removed by corporate. We had a man who asked daily for reports on his discharge dates but refused to be out of bed. I was in the middle of a meeting when I was sent a threatening message that he would leave the facility if I wasn't in his room in 5 minutes. Upon arrival, he screamed at me that I had made him stay in his wheelchair for 45 minutes straight. He was pointing his finger in my face and telling me how he was going to leave AMA when I finally lost it, my new employee standing right next to me. I told him in no uncertain words that he should leave. He should leave and stay in his bed at home, and that he could expect to die there shortly after, never walking or moving from the spot on his bed. I told him that he would never walk again. He couldn't just jump up and walk. A very common complaint among patients is that if they needed to, they could simply get up and walk. Very few are willing to admit to themselves that they've failed to do a very basic motor function. He was taken aback by this, thinking he would roll over me with his blustering threats. He then started on career threats, saying he'd get me fired and how I'd never work in therapy again. I told him who to ask for in the director's office and how to get in touch with his doctor and my supervisor. He then started in on threats of personal violence, telling me he'd break my jaw. I met this back with, "You can't even get out of bed, let alone make it 3 feet to me." This was on a Friday. By Monday, he was rolled into my office to apologize. He had felt so sure that he would win, but his wife had informed him that she would not be caring for him without a successful transition through therapy, and that he would be left permanently in the nursing home and she would live her life without him. He chose to give therapy a real attempt and succeeded. Story 36. Here it is. Worked in a local pizza shop in college waiting tables. 15 minutes before closing, a group of guys walk in wanting a table. That's fine. Serve their food, a pizza with every possible topping, and bring them pitchers of beer. A basketball game starts 10 minutes after the store is officially closed. At this point, I have checked on them several times, and they have all had at least 3 beers. Whatever, as long as they are eating and going to tip, I don't really care. Now it is 45 minutes after closing. They haven't been eating for at least 15 minutes, and they aren't ordering any more beer. It's obvious that they are only sticking around for the game on TV that doesn't seem anywhere near ending. My manager yells at me, asking what the holdup is. We've all been here 10 hours at this point and just want to go home. I tell him that my table has been taken care of completely, but won't pay their checks because they want to watch the game. He decides that he's going to fix that for me, and walks out and turns off the TV, then runs back to the kitchen. Now 6 semi-fully drink men are in a fit of rage, demanding that I turn the TV back on so that they can watch the game. I refuse, stating that we have been closed for some time, and the largest guy in the group stands up like he is going to take me on. Bear in mind that I'm a 19-year-old girl who easily has 8,100 pounds on. I walk away from the table to avoid confrontation, and he flips the remaining pizza off of the table onto the carpet, toppings flying everywhere. Not saying a word, I go get the broom and proceed to sweep as hard as I can, flinging toppings toward the table of men and accidentally hitting the huge man's chair with my broom. Just as he's about to react, one of our regulars strolls in wearing his police uniform to make sure we're okay, since it's so late after closing, and all the men pay their tabs and decide to leave then. Never saw them again. Story 37. Before university, I worked at this awesome pizza bar as a waiter. I had this really scummy family walk into the place and demand a table. Being the upstanding citizen, I organized a makeshift table to decrease their waiting time. The father ordered the double brandy and Coke, so I went and put in the order. Now, just to clarify, this place would get ridiculously busy. Sometimes an order from the bar would take 10-15 minutes. Suddenly, after 2 minutes, the man storms in and is like, "Where the hell is my drink?" I kindly respond by stating that I will bring it as soon as possible. However, the bar is backlogged. He responds, "Don't you talk back to me, boy, and don't even think about getting a tip." The evening carries on and I bring him his drink. He then proceeds to order a pizza. One of the most expensive pizzas at that. However, he requests no olives, no cheese, no onion, no pepper, etc. Basically just the pizza base, tomato paste, and the meat. The bill comes and I am immediately summoned back to the table. "Why is this pizza so expensive?" he questioned. "Because that's what you ordered," I replied. "But I didn't have 90% of the toppings," he screamed at me. "That does not change the price," I smirked. "I refuse to pay this," he argues. I walk back into the store, find my manager, and tell him the story. I then proceed to package the cheese, onions, and all other toppings into tiny plastic containers, slam it down on the table in front of the man and say, "There, you now have all your ingredients. Now pay the ducking bill and get out of here." They pay the bill and get escorted out of the joint by the manager. Honestly, waitering was fun, other than guys like that. Story 38. Working at a barber shop in New Zealand. Indian guy comes in for a haircut. He keeps leaning into the mirror and playing with his hair while I'm trying to cut it, fidgety and generally unimpressed, even though I'm halfway through the cut. I finally finish and not only give him an amazing haircut, but probably the best he's ever had. And he leans over to me, rather than talking via the mirror like a normal person, and says, "Too long, I want medium." So this ducker asks for another haircut. But in the format of a drink size. So I redo the entire haircut. And 15 minutes later, he leans in, plays with it, and says, "No good. Where can I go? Who will fix this?" I take the cape off of him, and I say, "Go down the road to adult store and buy yourself the biggest sex toy you can find. Seriously. And get the duck out of my shop." He ended up doing this frustrated side-to-side head bob that a lot of Indian customers do, but I still made him pay. Customers like him boil my piss. Story 39. I used to be a waitress/cashier at a French restaurant in our small town. Back then, it was one of the best restaurants in our place. Our guests, if not our boss's friends, are foreigners, Westerns, that trusted TripAdvisor reviews. One time, I had a guest, a local female, a Western husband, and another too. I took their orders. The lady ordered pizza, soup, salad, and pasta, then a steak. And by standard, I asked her which one she wants to be served first. And she just replied with annoyance, "Serve me whatever comes first. Serve me everything. I am so damn hungry already." So salad came and soup came and pasta came. I served it all together and she was so mad at me. She yelled at me saying, "Don't you know the standard when you are dining in a fine dining? Why would you serve me all these? Are you stupid?" So I reminded her that I asked her the moment I finished taking the order and blah, blah, blah. And yet she still insisted that I don't know anything, blah, 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 and still finished everything in the table. She was so mad and she kept staring at me, and I was so humiliated and mad. So while she kept staring at me, I just glared, and I kept raising my eyebrow when new guests. I smiled, and when I turned to her, I made a face and she snapped out, "Ha ha." She said I was acting like I owned the restaurant, that I was mean, unkind, that I don't belong in the hospitality industry, and that she doesn't like me and blah, blah, blah. And so my boss came out and apologized in my behalf and took me to her office. At first I thought she will scold me, but she just asked me what happened, and when I told her, she just laughed at me. She said that I'm crazy and not to do it again, the glaring and the eyebrow thing. I came to realize that being in customer service sucks. I quit being a server, and yet being a receptionist is just the same in Story 40. I used to be a Chinese food cook. One night, the kitchen was closed. I cleaned everything in the kitchen, and everything we had in the food warmer was what was going to last the rest of the night. The store closed in 30 minutes. This lady came up to the counter and ordered Kung Pao chicken, which was the last thing I made before closing down the kitchen. This woman started careening about how she didn't want the crap in the warmer because she was convinced it was just sitting there all day. I told her that unfortunately the kitchen was closed and what was in the warmer was all we had, but it was the last thing made before closing the kitchen, which was about 15 minutes prior. She then started to curse me out and was telling me how I was going to get fired because I was being so rude, and how she is the customer, which means I have to do what she says. So I looked at her, said fine, turned around, walked into the kitchen and cooked her a new batch of Kung Pao chicken, and I took the entire container of dry peppers and dumped it in the wok with the chicken. It was so strong I couldn't breathe when cooking it. I dumped it into the quart box, and half the box was dried pepper flakes. Walked out, gave it to her, rang her up, told her to have a good night. I hope she went home and was furious about it. Story 41. Cable installer. Had an appointment from 1:03 p.m. It's 11 a.m. I call the number on the account and ask if it is okay if I come early. They agree. Get to the home and everything is normal. They greet me and show me all the TVs and sign my pre-install agreement, how and where the TVs will be installed. I start working outside at the tap. Car comes flying down the road and into the driveway. Lady storms out of the car and right up to my face. "What are you doing?" she screamed, even though there was less than 1 foot between us. I start to tell her where I work and what I'm doing, but she interrupts me again. "What are you doing?" I try to continue, but again she interrupts. "Did you get permission to start early? My appointment was at 1 p.m. Again, I start to try to explain, but I'm cut off midway into my first sentence. "This is my house, and I did not tell you that you could come early." Try to apologize and start to say, "I apologize. Why are you here? I didn't say you could come early." I call, "Why are you here? I never gave you permission to come early." "I'm sorry, do you need me to come back later?" "Why are you here? This is my house. I didn't say you can come early." This went on for I don't know how long until I finally snapped. Only I didn't go on a tirade. I quietly gathered my tools and got into my truck and drove away. The whole time, she is now screaming, "Where are you going? Get back to work. You can't leave without finishing." I called the office and told them I refused to work with her at the home and expected to get fired, but they actually backed me up and told her they would return in 2 weeks if she promised to be civil. There were appointments available the next day, but my boss said he wanted to give her time to cool off. Story 42. Not so much snap, but the closest I've ever been was deciding how rude he wasn't worth the business, and sent him away. I used to work at a place that was right on a lake, and we ran a boat launch for people going out on the lake. We owned the land the boat launch was on. We owned the dock that made launching the boat 20 times easier, and we would help people launching their boats sometimes to the point where they just stood and watched. For this service, we'd charge $10 launch your boat. We've heard gripes before of people not liking the charge, but by the time the boat was in the water, most people were appreciative of the help. Well, one day, a family comes in wanting to put their boat in the water. Clearly, they don't see the large sign right next to the boat launch telling them how much it is. I'm hanging out inside next to my manager who's working the register when the guy comes in to inquire about it. He asks if they are allowed to launch here, and she tells them of course, but it will $10. The guy gets disgruntled saying that's ridiculous. My manager explains that the $10 is for use of the dock and the extra help we provide. The guy pulls out $10, slams it on the counter and says, for $10, he'd better put the boat on his ducking back and walk it into the lake, not realizing that me standing right there is the one that's going to help him. My manager looks at me, clearly understanding that this guy is going to be an asshole through the whole process, hands the guy his $10 back and tells him, sorry, but you aren't putting your boat in the lake today. Have a good day. The guy immediately starts to backpedal, saying, come on, I'll pay it, whatever. But my manager is adamant, tells him to leave. That was so satisfying. Story 43. Not me, but one of my coworkers when I worked at a pet store was ringing a guy out with several large items, and he could tell the guy's dog, a big German Shepherd mix, was sniffing around the counter in a very I got to pee kind of fashion. Noticing this, my coworker said, hey, I can hold your stuff here if you want to take her outside. She really has to pee. The guy just ignored him, trying to be a little blunter, but still courteous. He pressed further. Really, it's all right, and you can tell she's got to go, so she probably has a lot backed up. Guy said, just finish ringing me up. So coworker goes, all right, and tries to go through this guy's multiple giant bags of food and treats and toys as fast as he can, when of course she pees all over the front of his register area. The dude looks up, dead in the face, and says, clean that up. Coworker just said, no, I told you she was going to do that, and you did nothing. There is a station with paper towels and everything right over there for you to use. The guy explodes and goes on about how dare he be spoken to like that and demands a manager and all the good stuff. Meanwhile, I've opened another register to help the remaining customers and overhear this exchange behind me. I said, clean that up. And I said, take her outside. She's going to make a mess. Well, I'm not touching it. It's not my job to clean the place. Well, I'm not ringing up your crap until you clean up your dog's mess. Neither will I non-confrontationally peep. I have been in customer service for 30 years, and this is the worst I've ever experienced. Well, for someone who's been in customer service for 30 years, you're a pretty ducking awful customer. Then the store manager came over, told coworker to go outside and calm down, and then proceeded to do everything he could to placate the customer. Story 44. Worked in a high-end hippie store. Lady came in with her dog despite the mall's no dogs policy. Told her no dogs allowed, but she insisted she knew someone at corporate. It's bullcrap, but whatever, I don't get paid enough to argue. Dog immediately pisses on the floor. She looked over at me with this well look, like I was supposed to rush over and wipe it up. Nope, duck you lady. I just tossed a roll of paper towels at her and went back to folding story 45. Working at a car wash and a customer, really scummy kind of guy, who frequents my work, quite often pulls into the wash, stops and gives me his money for his wash. And we begin the process of washing his car. Well, instead of having his car in neutral, like he has 1000X before, the guy puts his car in drive and drives through half of the wash. Finally, he stopped, and I told him he couldn't back up because of the way our equipment works. If you pass a certain point, you can't go back. So he finishes his wash and pulls around and asks if he can come through again for a second wash for free. We do free rewashes for cars that are still dirty when they finish the wash. I told him no, that it wasn't my fault he drove halfway through the wash. I can understand someone driving a little bit through, but halfway is just ignorance. After I told him that the whole "I'm a loyal customer, let me talk to your manager" spiel came out. After about 5 minutes of being polite to him, and he started yelling at me, and I was just taking it in and being polite. Finally, when I had enough, is when he told me that he brings at least 100 cars here a month, so he should get at least one free wash anyway. I had enough, I yelled into his face. Well, you would think someone that comes here 100 times a month would know how to put their ducking car in neutral. I've never seen a customer so pissed at me, but I didn't give a damn. I was just as pissed as he was. Story 46. Mine is pretty boring, I suppose. I was working lunch shift at my restaurant and not everyone had some in yet, so I had to take a large party outside my section on top of covering my section. I, of course, get sat multiple times in a row until I'm left with a full section. The table in question was one of my first tables, and I was able to have a pleasant conversation with them, answering their questions and even getting the wife to laugh. I check on the table in question and they're fine, almost done, but fine. So I move on and start taking an order for a table that recently got sat. This table takes up a bit of my time because they have some questions, but it's literally a 3-top. So it took me less than 5 minutes to answer everything and take their order. I should note at this point, the two tables are next to each other. While I was taking their order, I see the other table talking to a busser that cleans off their table, and he comes to me and says they're ready for their check. I say okay and finish up, taking less than 2 minutes, print their check and bring it over. The guy immediately goes, "What's taking so long? We asked for the check a while ago." I, already stressed from dealing with multiple tables, quickly spit out, "I have other tables to take care of. You aren't my only table." Turn quickly on my heel and stalk off. Admittedly, there are plenty of other ways to deal with a guest like that, but I wasn't having it, especially when I know you haven't even been waiting 5 minutes. Not to mention, he could literally see and hear me helping the table next to him. Regardless, he tipped me nothing and wrote, "Bad service" on the check. Sorry, not sorry you didn't get your $25 check in time. Story 47. I used to work at Toys R Us in Australia. Mentioned Aus because I don't know if it's different elsewhere. They release a massive catalog sale from the starts of December, and it finishes at the end of trade on Christmas Eve. On Boxing Day, all prices revert back to normal. No sales at all. Now I know that this is a little bit in reverse to every other retailer out there, but Toys had a company line regarding that. It was basically stating the fact that toys should be cheaper before Christmas rather than after. Not very fair if it was otherwise. Well, it's Boxing Day 26th December. Big, strong fathers are yelling at teenage girls because they forgot to purchase batteries for the thing they got their kid on Christmas Day, despite the packaging being absolutely plastered with batteries not included. Angry mothers screaming that we sold them faulty toys on purpose and ruined Christmas. Normal stuff. In the outdoor section with swing sets and trampolines, etc., I come across a woman and ask if I can help. She has the ticket for a swing set in hand and says to me that it was $100 cheaper 2 days ago, and why is it not on sale? It's Boxing Day after all. Everything is supposed to be cheaper on sale. I explain the reasoning and she loses her mind, telling me that I have ruined Christmas for her kids, purely because she refuses to purchase stuff for them until it's on sale on Boxing Day. I tried for a while to remain polite, and it was getting me nowhere. So I cracked and let loose at her, calling her irresponsible. She yells a few obscenities and then says she'll never shop here again. I tell her to get out and not come back, because we don't need people like her. It was fun, and one of many times I went off on people at that place. Story 48. Worked as a trainee piercer, shop girl, general, everything in a tattoo, piercing studio. Had this lady march in with her, obviously, underage daughter, and started screaming and yelling the place down about how we had pierced her daughter's belly button without her consent. Now we keep consent forms on the premises for about 2 months for everything we do, and we keep them right under the counter at the front of the shop where I stand. After her refusing to believe me that under no circumstances would we have pierced her belly even with parental consent, we had a 16+ policy. I ask her name and pull out the consent form. Surprise, no form for this girl. Mother starts ranting about how we must have hidden it to cover ourselves and she was going to sue us and we were all going to be arrested. I then asked the mother who her daughter had told her actually did the piercing. She said some tall guy. Well, all our piercers are women. Asked her if she specifically said she got it done here, as there are also 2 other shops which do this piercing within walking distance. She said in town, which we were, but so are the other shops. Daughter is totally silent during this whole exchange and looking like she wants the ground to swallow her. Mother realized she's made a mistake and starts attacking me personally about how piercings and tattoos are ugly and about my mother must feel with me working in such a place. I told her my mom was upstairs as we spoke, getting her back tattooed, and if there was anything else I could help her with. She left. I smiled. It was amusing. Story 49. For a while I worked in one of those Starbucks in a grocery store. I came in as my manager was leaving. She hadn't finished some stocking up front and I was working with one other girl who knew what she was doing. We always had a line, but it was Tuesday, so the biggest it got was 4 people. I was stocking for like 5 minutes on a ladder when I noticed that the lady at the register had a lot of kids. The lady behind her left. No big deal. A lot of people think if they are the second person in line, they'll get their order quick. That's not really how it works at Starbucks between the custom orders and the kids' orders. This lady came up to me. I knew her face. She always complained, but in that I'm being extra nice because I'm on the verge of exploding tone. Excuse me, that other lady just left and I've been waiting for 10 minutes. Don't you think you should help customers before stocking? I'm sorry, but we always have a line. I need to get this done as quick as possible, but you're next in line. So you shouldn't have to wait that much longer, I explained. My boss was walking by. She called him over to tell him that I wasn't working fast/hard enough. By the time she was done, not only was it her turn in line, but everyone behind her had left. My boss pointed that out. I made a point of making her drink, and she got decaf that day. I never helped her after that. Always stopped, looked right at her, and then asked some else to take over the line. Story 50. I am a construction supplies sales rep at a major lumber company in Western New York. I had a customer call in recently to place a large order for cedar decking boards. I set it all up, informed him that the delivery coordinator would be calling him in the afternoon with a 3-hour delivery window for the next day. Everything went pretty smoothly. Fast forward a few hours, the guy calls back and starts screaming at me, "You're stupid mother ducker. You open your ducking ears when I talk to you. I need a morning ducking delivery, you stupid duck. I can't have my guys sitting around waiting for a delivery to arrive in the afternoon. How ducking stupid can you be?" I replied, "I apologize for the mix-up, but it is the busy season, and our schedule is booked very tight. We worked our best to make sure you could get your delivery tomorrow. What can I do to help you lose as little time as possible?" He replied, "You can open up your ears when I talk to you, you stupid piece of crap. You ducking idiot high school drop put scumbag illiterate piece of crap. I have a master's degree. BTW. I just love construction, which is why I got into this industry." I replied, "Are you done?" He responds, "Oh no, I'm not done. I'm gonna come down there and beat the crap out of you." Me, screaming into the phone, "Good mother ducker. You know my name. I work right by the ducking door. I'll be waiting for you. As soon as I see your ducking face, I'll smash you through the ducking window. Telephone tough guy." I slammed the phone down, and everyone I work with was laughing their ass off. Story 51. Mine's a mild story, but I worked at this tech support job back in the late 90s. Some guy had called in upset. His service wasn't working after doing a few yes sirs, no sirs. He went off saying, "I'm a doctor, I work for a living." All I could say is, "Well, I see nothing on your account that states you're a doc, but anyways, how'd that help us get your internet back up and running?" Surprisingly, he apologized, and we got back to troubleshooting and got his service back up and running. We also had another customer that would call in and complain all the time about small stuff, wanting us to do stuff that was out of our support range, like defrag her PC and so on. She pissed some tech off that ended up capping her cable modem speeds around 15 keys, and it was like that for a month or so. Everyone knew her and hated getting calls from her. At one point, someone got a hold of a login that had admin rights to the program and made up a new billing fee of major Karen fee, and I forget what the dollar amount was, but it was whatever the max the system would let them do it for, because it was all 9. But she got someone in billing before that billed out, so it was taken off before she even saw it. We had another one who threatened to drive up to the call center and hit everyone. Was before 9/11, so it was treated differently. The rep that was the sales rep that was on the call said, "Sir, do you need directions?" The manager gave him a free install and his first 2 months free, and he canceled his service after that. The manager had no spine, Story 52, was fixing a computer for a customer. He had previously come in multiple times. He has a stupid walrus mustache. He's always talking down to people. He's some old man that can hardly check his email. AMD refuses to leave until I fix his computer, which takes time, I tell him. Anyway, he asked me, "How long you been working on computers?" So I said, probably about, didn't even have time to say a number. He just says, "Well, if you have to think about it, then that tells me all I need to know." He's been coming in for days, constantly doing crap like that, and I had enough. "Listen here, you can either let me fix your computer or get the duck out." He shut up. I fixed his computer, never saw him again, and I hope I never will again. Another customer, which was the same day I turned my 2 weeks notice in at my old job, told me to shut up and that I'm a worthless piece of crap while I was checking her out at the register. Completely out of the blue. Never seen her before. Don't got what her problem was. Anyway, told her, "Oh well, get over it, you ducking Karen." I hated Office Depot so much. Story 53. I didn't really go off on this person, but it's the closest I've ever come. It was the end of my shift working in a restaurant, and I was sweeping up my section so I could go home. There was another table nearby in another person's section, and they were the only table left on that side of the restaurant. This woman in their party starts saying, "What does this girl think she's doing? How can she do this? I can't believe this. Someone needs to make her stop. Make her stop." I could hear every word she was saying, but continued to keep sweeping because I don't need to be spoken to indirectly like an idiot. Finally, a man from their group walks up to me and says, "Excuse me, can you please stop sweeping?" I can see the woman breaking her neck and turning in her chair to scowl at me. I place my hands at the top of the broom and say, "Why? There's a lot of things on the ground I'd like to clean up for you, unless you'd prefer to sit near piles or rubbish on the floor." The woman nearly loses her crap and gasps dramatically. The man slowly blinks his eyes and says, "Just please." That was enough for me. The only reason why I didn't push it any further is because he was clearly just as tired of this woman's bullcrap as I was. Anyway, I said fine and then got in trouble because the woman made a big deal of it to the managers. Honestly, if she had just asked me to stop sweeping like a normal human being, then I would have. Tired of people treating service industry workers like we're beneath them. Get off your high horse, woman. You're eating at a Chili's. Story 54. I used to work in a hole-in-the-wall little diner, and we had a fair amount of license to be sassy to customers. because our owner was a grizzled, take-no-crap old lady. Friday night rolls around, we're packed, I'm hustling. I was working the floor that night, not bar, so I wasn't really handling takeout orders, but I could always hop on the bar if I needed to. I'm carrying a crap load of plates to dish, and this woman is standing at the register looking quite irate. Ash turns around and I see that she's got her phone to her ear, and she says, "Is someone going to bother helping me? I don't appreciate being ignored." I reply, "I'll be happy to help you as soon as you get off your phone," and point to the huge ducking sign at the bar that says, "We will not serve you if you are on your phone." We also have a very clear policy from the owner not to even acknowledge someone until they get off their phone. I walk to the back and continue my business, then mosey up to the counter to see she's hung up her phone. I start ringing her up and she goes off on me. "I don't appreciate you being rude to me." "I'm sorry you feel that way, ma'am. Are you implying I don't know how to read?" "Ma'am, I have no doubt you can read, but you clearly choose not to." Then she starts fuming about how the letters are tiny. She didn't see the sign and that's no excuse to be rude, etc. And I just point to the large, bold print sign and walk away. Story 55. This isn't me snapping at a customer, but my whole manager. I was working my first ever job in a crafty local pizza shop. I live away from the cities in a country town, so this is the only pizza shop for 50 kilometers. Being crafty, they decided that it was okay to neglect food quality and standard and did all kinds of shifty things. Fast forward a year, everyone in the shop knew the manager was working there illegally. He had been claiming money for unemployment, but lied and was the manager. One day, the caseworker for his benefits came in to order a pizza. He knew he was busted at this point. He lies to her, "I'm just covering my brother's shift." She could tell, and he knew it. When he went to make his pizza, I saw a long, globby line of spit come out of his mouth and land on the pizza. He then covered it with cheese. "Here, your Hawaiian pizza," to my favorite caseworker. I then watch as she eats it outside. Disgusted, I yell at him and report him to the boss of the franchise. As I would find out a week later, the whole chain was scummy and I was fired. Worth standing up to him, though. I told everyone I knew about it, and now it gets a little less business. Story 56. Back when I worked for a bank, I had a customer who wanted to withdraw a couple $1,000s from his account. He got very upset when I asked him for his driver's license. "Why the hell do you need that? I come here all the time. It's me. My name is his name." On and on and on. I just kept calmly repeating that it was company policy that existed for his own protection, up until he busted out with this little gem. "You could be trying to steal my identity for all I know." I'd just about had it with this brand of stupidity. So I looked him right in the eye and told him, "Sir, the bank already has all of this information on file. If I wanted to clean out your account and steal your identity, I could have already done it. I already know you live at address, work for business, and your kid goes to college. You get paid every other Friday, you get your coffee at Wawa, and you fill up at Sunoco. I could tell you your social security number right now if I wanted to, but I don't. I just want your driver's license so I can confirm that you are who you say you are. You have two choices. You can either give it to me, I'll write the number down on the withdrawal slip and get you your money, or you can stop wasting my time and get out of my line right now." He gave me the license. Story 57. I used to work at an auto body shop doing detailing on cars. One day, a lady picked her car up at the very end of the day after every other person had left. So it was just me and the receptionist. Sadly, her car had died, so I went to get the booster, and she was pissed about this because he recommended her a new battery because the car kept dying. I was fairly new, and she had an Audi or something, so of course the battery is tucked away without obvious posts to jump off. So I was taking my time somewhat to make sure I did it correctly and didn't fry the thousands of electronic equipment if I ducked it up. This pissed her off even more, and she started going off on me. I took it for a second or two, and she said, "Do you even ducking work here?" Which just made my blood boil. So I unhooked the terminals from the booster and left that Karen sitting in the parking lot with her dead car. It felt so good to drive away while she was sitting there watching me. I guess she called a friend or something because we never heard from her again. My boss never gave me crap for it, just asked me to not do that again. The shop was in a wealthy area, so we dealt with so many arrogant holes. I'm so glad I don't deal with customers anymore. Story 58. After a year and a half of taking complaints for tech support, I had a customer that couldn't restart his computer because the watch battery in it was dead, and every restart required a long period of entering in dates, DOS-based machine. This guy would not accept the standard answer and was expecting me to help him with his uninstall, reinstall, and build a script to input dates automatically or something. I dealt with the guy for over 2 hours of constant rudeness and badgering while we took a lot of extra time fixing his problem. He was almost appreciative. Then I get to the point where I add, "And these changes will take effect when you do a complete restart." I talked over him for the first few seconds, telling him to wait 30 seconds before restarting. I didn't let him finish, I just kept saying that and interrupting him. I let him start to cuss me out for a second, but I had had enough. I told him to duck off and threw the headset. Story 59. A few years ago, I had to deal with a real nasty customer who had come in with his girlfriend. Dude had a real Napoleonic complex, and it was obvious he was acting like a tough guy to show off for his woman. Fortunately, management got involved before things escalated too far, but I had to stand there and seethe while he made physical threats and insults. My boss sent him on his way, assured me I'd done nothing wrong, and told me to take a lunch to cool down. So, 20 minutes later, I'm standing in line at Chipotle with a coworker telling him about what had happened when I hear a familiar voice somewhere behind me. I turn around and see my couple from the store had just walked through the door. As the girlfriend makes eye contact with me and froze, I give them a big smile and shout out to the guy, "Hey buddy, small world, isn't it? Got something you want to say to me now? Still want to kick my ass?" On hearing my voice, the until recently tough guy flinched as if he had been stabbed with a hot poker, then turned white as a sheet and began stuttering, No, thanks, man, we're cool." After hanging around nervously in line for a few seconds, they turned around and left. I had no intention of actually fighting the guy, but it was so worth it to see their reaction. Story 60. Worked at a bar many years ago. Very busy, line was 7 deep. One customer asked for their drinks. Then as I handed the drinks over, she said, "Oh, this was supposed to be a hard cider, not a lager. I think I asked for the wrong thing." No problem. I left the fresh pint of lager in the bar, poured her a cider, and she paid. Next customer, who saw this go down, asked for a pint of lager. I pointed at the one I just poured not 30 seconds ago, and she said, "No, I was a fresh one. I saw you pour that for someone else, not for me." No problem. Poured her a fresh, and she paid. Next customer, again not 30 seconds later, who had seen me pour the pint and seen the customer in front of him refuse it, says, "I want a pint of lager, a fresh one, not that one," and then grins at me. No problem. This one has been sitting here for 60 seconds, and you saw me pull it. I was going to give it to you for free if you ordered a lager. "Oh, sure, I'll take it then." I laughed and said, "Too late, mate." I picked up the lager and downed it in one gulp, then poured him a fresh one and charged him. He was pissed. Funnily enough, my boss had been watching this whole thing go down. I got yelled at for drinking behind the bar. Story 61. Well, I didn't do the yelling, but the security guard did on my behalf. A customer came to my store with an issue with a video camera, and I test it, confirm he has a problem. No worries, and prepare the paperwork for sending it away. Customer gets really quiet and gets a dark look on their face, picking up their camera and walking to the door. I follow him and ask something along the lines of, "Sir, is there a problem? Things are okay to get this fixed under warranty." Customer loses their crap at me. This is despite being polite and greenlighting everything for repairs, exactly like what he was happy to do not 1 minute before. Everything seemed like a by-the-book encounter up until this point. As well as can be expected in your average retail service customer encounter, I was rather taken aback. At the end of it, rants something about reporting me to whom exactly, and to duck off. Customers around us are slack-jawed and dumbfounded by this display. This was all in front of the security guard, who is now seeing absolute red. They come charging over and unleash on them, telling the customer they were out of line. How dare they speak to me like that, and that they are now banned from the store, so you duck off and don't come back. Customer leaves without further incident, despite looking like they want to fight about it. Security guard was usually unflappable. No idea what got into them that day. Story 62. My store has a policy that store brand items don't need a receipt to be returned. This guy comes up the front counter with 3 store brand phone cases, $20 each. He says he rang head office. They said he can return them without a receipt, as it doesn't fit his phone. He couldn't remember the person's name he spoke to on the phone. He gets his $60 cash return and walks out. A few weeks later, he comes up the front counter again. Exact same items, exact same story of phoning head office. I tell him he should really keep a receipt for this kind of stuff, as he keeps buying the wrong phone cases for his phone. How could you not know from the first time around that they wouldn't fit his phone? He gets a store credit and leaves. So again, a few weeks later, he walks up to the front desk again with some more phone cases in hand, and I just snap. He tells me the same story again, and I just snatch the cases out of his hands, throw them into our returns bin, and tell him to stop stealing the phone cases off the shelf and getting them returned, because I'm not doing it anymore. His jaw was dropped the whole time. Then he goes, "Well, I'm going to phone head office." Me, "Good, maybe you'll actually call them this time." I have gone off at customers many a time. I'm surprised I've never gotten a warning yet. Story 63. I worked in hotel reservations. There is usually a rate that is only available online and is a final sale situation. It's called the web rate, or internet special, or lowest price guarantee, something like that. Anyway, if you book it, you don't get your money back even if you cancel. Those rules pop up at least 3 times on the website of the company I worked for. This guy calls in and is pissed off because he needs to cancel a web rate reservation, and the hotel has told him the deal. I tell him the same thing and say that he clicked the box to agree to the terms, and therefore he has to follow those rules. He starts freaking out and saying things like, "You're probably just a 19-year-old single mother with no future, and you're so stupid, this is the only job you could get," and ends with, "Never stay at your hotels again." At this point, I said something like, "Good, I don't care if you never stay again." That pissed him off even more, and he went on about, "How dare I," and, that sort of thing. I had to be like, "Sir, you already paid us, and we don't want any more business from a person who doesn't read the terms he is agreeing to and thinks that's a good reason to scream at the reservation girl." My manager thought it was funny instead of yelling at me. It was glorious. Story 64. Work fast food. Customer returned fries because they wanted salt-free, so I put down another batch. Waited, took them up, and brought them to the customer, salt-free. 2 minutes later, they come back and flip major crap, saying they are still too salty. I didn't lose my crap, but my manager behind the counter didn't take too kindly and kicked him out of the store. Felt good. Story 65. I used to work in a hotel and had to deal with my fair share of holes. One that jumps out right away was a guest called about a broken bathroom door handle. I, being the maintenance supervisor at the time, went to the room to handle the situation. I get to the room and the guy was being rude as soon as he opened the door, telling me the door was just hanging off when they checked in. So I examined the broken handle. I put it back on, and it turned out it wasn't broken. What actually was wrong is the guy's 2-year-old toddler locked it from the inside, and Dad was cranking really hard to try and pop the lock open. When he did that, the handle became slightly worn, and if you turned the handle all the way down while locked from the inside, the handle would pop off. All that needed done was to operate the handle properly, and don't put all your strength into opening it. The rude part was the guy nearly shouting at me while I fixed it about how his kid could have been hurt in there with the broken handle. I got fed up and told him, "Well, if you disciplined your child for being bad, this stuff wouldn't break." He demanded to speak to someone in charge. He didn't like when I was. Story 66. 2 years ago, I was working at a convenience store when I had a customer come in around 5:30 in the morning, a half hour before my shift ended, with his girlfriend, and wanted me to find some sort of tobacco product that was usually stored in the back room. So I politely asked the guy if he could wait while I assisted a handicapped customer with something, and he rolled his eyes and said, "Okay." About a minute later, he's almost yelling at me to hurry up. I'm getting a little annoyed at this guy, so I just ignore him. When I walk back up to the register, the guy ducking grabs me. I promptly retaliated by punching him in the jaw. He staggers back a bit and looks at me in surprise more than anything else. His girlfriend gets on her phone and calls the police, while my manager, who just so happened to be there early that day, hears the commotion and comes out and tells me to go to the back room, so I do so. Not too long later, my manger comes back and asks me what happened. I said a man grabbed me, so I punched him. When the police showed up, they questioned my manager, myself, the man, his girlfriend, and several other customers. Story ends with us both being arrested for simple assault. Story 67. When I first started working at this convenience store, we had this customer that came in and always acted like he was above everyone else. He worked for a bank but didn't have a bank account, so he would use the swipe reload cards that we offer. Well, one of these transactions, he put $200 onto a card and he was on his way. He comes back in 15 minutes later complaining that the money isn't on the card. My coworker at the time was helping him and trying to figure out what was wrong. She was really trying her best and it wasn't enough. So the guy starts berating my coworker and begins to claim that we are trying to steal his money. My coworker starts crying from all of his insults. My manager steps in and helps him with the problem. Once my manager was done, the customer looks over at the crying girl and says, "See that? I've embarrassed you in front of all your friends." My switch flipped when I heard that. I marched over to him and told him that his disrespect towards my coworkers is not something we tolerate, and I happily walked him out of the store and told him he was no longer welcome. I try to be as nice as possible to all customers. Story 68. Karen wanted a wireless surge protector and insisted that they exist. And she wasn't talking about prototypes. She was adamant that a house-wide wireless surge protector had recently entered the marker. Those were the 10 longest minutes of my life as I tried to convince her that she was full of crap without blatantly insulting her. I don't even remember how that ended because I was filled with such blinding rage that it's all one angry blur. Duck. Story 69. Ah, man. When I was at university, I used to work in a fast food restaurant between semesters. Overall, I did about 4 years on-off and took a lot of crap as a result. Cue my final ever week in that place. I was on the cusp of handing in my dissertation and getting my degree. So this guy comes in and off the bat is rude to me. He then demands he has onion rings instead of fries and kicks off when I tell him we can't. My manager backs me up and he orders just the meal. I get it all together and when I put it on the counter, he asks if the onion rings are in there. I explain he didn't order them and he goes ballistic. Starts calling me a stupid ducking fast food worker and said I was never going to make anything of my life and be stuck here forever. I literally smacked his meal onto the floor, looked at him, sarcastically went whoops, and walked off. Left him yelling at my back, and my manager had to sort it all out. They didn't do anything because they knew he was rude to me, and also I was gone by the week's end anyway.